All right, peace and blessings, family. I'm back on here for the final show of the night, and basically, I'm in the midst of this series where I'm sharing black films and different types of black films, if you will. So tonight, what I'm going to share with you all are black music documentaries that you should familiarize yourself with. One of the things that I've learned just over the years, I come out of a tradition where music has brought my people and my ancestors through a lot. It helped us to maneuver and navigate. And so these black films I'm going to share with you tonight, these are documentaries on black music. And one of the things I found when I would talk to people who were British or Asian or even Latino, they really did study black music. I don't know how y'all feel, but first of all, I'm just very proud of my people. But the second thing is, I wish that we would really understand how powerful our people are, that people will study them. So if you give me a minute, let me try to make this bigger for you all. I don't know why it's not allowing me to, let me go this way. Why is it not allowing me to make it bigger? I don't know what that's about. I asked for the full screen. That's what it said it gave me. Hold on, family. I'm just going to double check here. Maybe if I go like this, and then, oh, I think I may know what it is. Let me try this one more time. Okay, so I think that's about as big as it gonna get. One last time, family. Hold on. I'm going to try one last thing, and then I'm just going to go on. So, and go through these documentaries with you all. Some of them, all of them, I love. I'm gonna explain it to you, like when I watched them, what they meant to me. Some of them explain so many things to me. So many things. Okay, y'all, I think I got it now. Tell me if this makes a better difference. I hope so. Okay, so tonight, black films. Black films. These are documentaries, black music documentaries. Sometimes, like, I know that we're this very rhythmic people. If you've ever known a lot of things about our origins, where we come from, that African rhythm, that origins of sound, how we roll. Let me make sure this is right, because this is looking kind of different on my computer. This looks too big. All right, hold on, family. I'm gonna get this right. Maybe I gotta bring it back just a little bit. Maybe if I bring it right there. Okay, I'm gonna try it again. Okay, this should do. This should do, because I have a bunch of stuff. So tonight, we're gonna look at black film documentaries on black music. Black music. Now, mind you, some of the people that are telling these stories, most times it ain't us. Most time it's like a British person or a Swedish person or a French person. But these are about us. And so we need to know. I think one of the things that make me a little sad sometimes is how we don't really appreciate the origins or the struggle of music. That is our music. And yes, our descendants, our ancestors left us their legacy, but it is really up to us, family, to study that legacy. It's really up to us. So with that being said, I'm not going to play with this anymore. I'm just going to go ahead on and start it off. Here we go. All right, here we go, family. Black film documentaries on black music. You must watch, listen, and learn. So crucial, family, so crucial. Okay, the first documentary is The Life of Raleigh. This is the untold truth of American story of an orphan boy from the heart of Mississippi Delta who rose to music stardom around the world and inspired generations of fans against all odds. When I watched this documentary, I cried because I really didn't know most of this stuff about B.B. King. I knew he was a great man. I knew he struggled, but what I didn't know was really his origins. And the interesting thing is, for me, in my truth, is that I have spent time where he is from in the Mississippi Delta. uh, Sharkey County, Anguilla. I have been to all of those places in what they call the Deep Delta, um, which is very different. I have so much respect for Mr. BB King. His story, he hit on so many things. So the making of the blues is not something that was pretty and crafted. Most people love to sing the blues. Nobody wants to live the blues. And when you hear his story, there were parts in it that just hit me in my gut, and it made him such a greater man. There's a lot of things he talked about in the life of Raleigh that I did not know about BB King. I had no clue of who this man really was, though I loved his music. But it's something about when you really see great people and then you learn about what makes them great. Where did Lucille come from? You know, what was his personal life like? What motivated him? How he helped people? What was his journey? He wasn't always this great man playing the blues. He lived the blues. Living the blues and singing the blues is two different blues, y'all. It ain't the same thing. And most times, other people love our blues, but they don't want to live the blues. They don't want none of that. So, the life of Raleigh, BB King story, y'all, this man is the greatest because he went through some things. And it's a lot of things that we never would consider or even understand about BB King. But it's on Netflix. This is a movie worth watching. It's a documentary worth watching. When we talk about the blues, I don't think we have an idea of really where that comes from. And because in some of Black culture today, there is no respect for ancestors or elders in their struggle. So when you watch this, you will look at music and the blues and all of the origins thereafter, very different, even before thereafter, a little differently. The next one is about John Coltrane, Chasing Train. This is on Netflix, family. Set against the social, political, and cultural landscape of the times, Chasing Train brings John Coltrane to life as a fully dimensional being, inviting the audience to engage with Coltrane, the man and the artist. Love John Coltrane. I had no idea because I'm from Philadelphia. He lived in Philadelphia for a small bit, and I had no idea that John Coltrane, I was the house that I don't know if I think his parents lived in it, that I would be riding past there all the time when I'm in Philadelphia. Like, man, this man's another man. Again, understanding his story, you know, him kicking drugs, him, you know, the ups and downs will come with being a musician. And I think sometimes people like to say they artists, and I'm like, yeah, okay. But he comes from that era of jazz musicians who went through some things. And so it will behoove us that when we have these great ancestors and elders like this, we need to know their stories, y'all, because we keep repeating the same mistakes or situations because for some reason we refuse to look at stories. We refuse to look at the people who come before us. And I'm a jazz fanatic, grew up with that in my house. My dad, blessed memory, he loved jazz. That's where I got the love of jazz from. And we just need to really, really, really know their stories because it's going to help us in our journey. And I firmly believe that they want us to know their story so that we can get further than they've ever been, but also that camaraderie of speaking from a place, not from everything's all bad, which it could be, but mainly from a place of, you know, we're trying to build something here. We're trying to get somewhere. And what I loved about jazz even to this day, it allows me to think. It doesn't clutter my thought. It allows me to think. So, Chasing Train. The next one of my favorite singers of all times, Sister Nina Simone, Queen Mother, the High Priestess of Soul, Nina Simone, classically trained pianist, driven bar chattelsis, Black Power icon, and legendary recording artist Nina Simone lived a life of brutally honest musical genius and tortured monolith. I always mess this word up. I cried on hers as well. I'm definitely a fan of Nina Simone, and I'm not gonna lie, I did cry on her documentary because as a Black woman, I totally felt Nina Simone. I felt her pain. I felt where she was coming from. I felt where she was trying to live and to be, and not always being allowed to be great because of the way you looked or you didn't fit a certain uh, I don't know, image, because Black folks, we are so tied up in the image, is really quite sad. But there's so many things about this documentary that were just awesome. And I learned so many things about Nina Simone. What Happened, Miss Simone is the name of the film. This film is on Netflix. It is a must watch. I mean, here's a woman who classically trained. Wasn't let into a certain school because of her skin color, even though they tried to apologize decades later. That always cracks me up. Sometimes I don't even know what the purpose of that is. But also with Sister Nina, here's a woman who embraced the Black Power movement and went all the way to the edge and even jumped off for the concept of Black freedom and liberation. This woman lived in Africa. I mean, she did a lot of amazing things. Her life was not perfect, of course, because there's always ups and downs. But there is something to be said about an artist who kicks the door open, who really put thoughts into her music, and then somebody like, say, Diana Ross gets to walk through the door of that greatness. And we act like we don't even understand who Nina Simone was. So a must see documentary is What Happened, Nina. It was very insightful, Sequestra. I learned so much from her. And I've always loved her, but I think I just loved her more because the truth of the matter is I seen parts of myself in her. Like, and how she dealt with, disappointment, her trying to find love. This was a very strong woman. It was just incredible. She lived next door to Malcolm X and his wife. Malcolm X kids played with her daughter. I mean, incredible. Greatness is always around you. It really is. The next film is called I Called Him Morgan. This is it gives you the account of the life and relationship between jazz trumpeter Lee Morgan and his common law wife, Helen Morgan, later responsible for his murder in 1972. So this documentary was really good. Learned a lot about him. I used to hear about Lee Morgan, but I didn't know much about him. So I learned so much about this guy, but I also learned a lot about just relationships and when you're an artist and some of the things that happened during that time. I Called Him Morgan. That's the name of that documentary. This is 2 on Netflix. Netflix, say what you want to say, they do allow people to bring stories to life that I would have never heard of or got introspect on. This next piece you can see on YouTube is called Reflections on the East with Juju's Punky Branch. This is the Juju founder and saxophonist, James Plunky Branch, returning to his historical home of the legendary Brooklyn jazz venue and cultural center called The East in the early 2019, reflecting on the East, its importance in jazz legacy, and the calderon of music now called spiritual jazz. Now, this is very short. This is about 7 minutes. And the beauty of this documentary, I was heavily influenced by a lot of the people that played there and how for them it was like a spiritual place, like a church, like a sacred, place for you to go and hear jazz. And it just spoke to you. And I can feel that because that's how I feel when I listen to particular jazz, whether it's Pharoah Sanders or listen to certain John Coltrane pieces. I mean, it's just an incredible film. It's about 7 minutes. It's short, but people live in Brooklyn. You may be walking past this place and not even know the historical importance of being so close to such a place that held such energy for spiritual jazz. All right, now I'm getting to the series called Deep Soul. I watched all 6 episodes, and this is called So Deep. And what I liked about this documentary, because there's many, it gave a lot of awesome accounts. So the first episode, this is Deep Soul, the story of Black popular music. The first episode is The Birth of Soul. Started with Ray Charles, but really the way they tell the story, they kind of, it says Brother Ray Charles was an alchemist who took R&B, jazz, and gospel and forged the very first soul music. This is what they're saying. We don't know. There could be other people. I think they did the best they could. Featured in this first Deep Soul series is Louis Jordan and Ruth Brown. This is interesting. Ruth Brown is the sister in the middle in this picture, and she was incredible, but Ray Charles was her pianist. Little Richard's in here, Bill Haley, and the Comments. So these are some of the earlier blues, which they call race music. They talked about how then it was named R&B. And then when they were stealing the black people's music, they came up with the term rock and roll. And then what they would do, they would recover people's songs, and it would be white artists, and they would make all the money, and the black artists didn't make any money. The other part that I noticed that most people who sign folks, and usually the people who owned those record companies, were all white people. That's why sometimes it's kind of hard to listen to these stories, because we know that black folks really we were getting robbed each way we turned. White people can come set up a record shop and a record company in the middle of a black community and then rob everybody. They didn't come off like we're gonna rob you, but people never got their just due. And to have this term rock and roll, which is really you stealing black music with the white artists, you know what I mean, being able to have credit. But this first one is So Deep, is the story of the birth of soul, because then Ray Charles took it and was like, and I love the way he talked about it. And here he's going to give you his description of what rock and roll really is. Coming from Ray Charles, that means a lot, because there's a man who really paid his dues. You got to watch this series, the whole series. This is on YouTube. So that was number one. So Deep 2, again, the story of black popular music, is the gospel highway with Sam Cooke. And this is the first soul star, they're saying, is Sam Cooke took black music out of the church and into the charts. He was also the first politicized black artist. Featured in this second Deep Soul is the Isley Brothers and Bobby Womack and the Staple Singers and Salmon Burke and Johnny Taylor and Billy Preston and Aretha Franklin. There's some other people as well, but they're all featured in there, and they talk about the influence of gospel music and how they use some of those songs and created, soul music. And the interesting thing about it is, when you really understand the origins of it, all of that soul has everything to do with who we are, how we survived. I was not shocked that this came out of church, because church is a place where we went to kind of release and to commune with God, but also to let those sounds and things out of our spirit. And you get to see that. So of course, soul music has everything to do with your soul, when we know that gospel music is the same thing. So that's So Deep 2. So Deep 3, again, the story of black popular music, the sounds of young America. They kind of highlight the Supremes, and the initially known as the No-Hit Supremes, but Barry Gordy persistence finally paid off. Featuring in this one is Jackie Wilson, The Miracles, Mary Wells, Martha and the Vandellas, Muddy Waters, the James, and the Four Tops. So they're featured in this, and it talked about that Motown sound and other sounds as well from other record companies, but Motown was just on fire. And again, only black man I've seen to be in the working class, I guess, part of Detroit, and open up a record company and basically cashed in, because he also wrote a hit for somebody famous. That was in my notes, but I cannot remember who he was. And he really realized it was money in this. So that's how he really started. That was his vision. And so I think he came up with a formula that we've seen a lot of in the 70s and even in the 90s and 2000s. So that's So Deep, number 3. Number 4, So Deep, the story of black popular music, is Southern Soul, which is Otis Redding. From a brief audition at Stats to global stardom, Otis distilled the essence of the Southern Soul before his untimely death. Featured in this is Booker T and the MGs, Wilson Pickett, Sam and Dave, Aretha Franklin, and Percy Sledge. Now, let me stop for a minute right here, family, because I got to tell you something about this particular episode number 4. One of the things that kind of gets me a little bit, and this is just my truth. It's breezy out here. Let me hit this window because it was hot earlier. One of the things that kind of get me about this particular part of the documentary is this is Southern soul. So we know we're talking about Otis Redding and all of the stuff that was happening in the South. And of course, there was white musicians. And so one of the things that pains me is that when we talk about race and music, what we leave out is that white people just got to exist. Black people have always been open. There's never been on record where Black people have lynched white people. So when we try to paint this utopia that we were living Dr. King's dream because some white musicians could play with Black musicians, I hope they got paid fairly. We leave out the political climate in terms of what that must be like. It's like I can sit next to white people, we can have a really good time. But if we're not treated fairly in the world, if I can't get the same housing you got, if I can't get paid the same, please stop telling Black people stories as if everything has to be balanced by how white people felt about us, because to me, that is a form of oppression. Like, I think the Southern soul was great music. Again, soul music, here we are deep to the place of where a lot of trauma happened for people of African descent. We're talking about the horrible events of slavery. These are people who were still in the South. And so here they were creating music, speaking to your soul, which was a beautiful thing. But I also think sometimes we have to remind white people that just because we're able to sing together and play some music together, and yes, you helped me on the hook and what X, Y, and Z, that sound, you can give us pig guts and we'll make chitlins. So I think we got to always remember that people still got cheated out of their stuff, even though we created the sounds of soul. So though it's a good documentary, I just get so tired of us trying to make white people feel like we're brothers and sisters when we're not treated that way in the world. And we're talking about the South. And the interesting thing about this is that, it ended with, the untimely death of Otis Redding and how, it was a struggle. And then with Dr. King getting killed, and then all of a sudden all the progress was gone. But I didn't think we really had any progress. Let's just stop lying. It was just hard. People were still struggling. And so, of course, the next brand of music that came out of Deep Soul 5 makes more sense that we would have Deep Soul 5, Ain't It Funky Now? And it started off talking about James Brown and the funky president, the hardest working man in show business. JB gave us the one, and the rest is history. This features Miles Davis, Sly and Family Stone, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Parliament, Public Enemy, and Eric B. and Rakim. And the evolution. So it talked about James Brown in that one, but it breaks down like what the funk meant to Black folks and what that was all about, and the liberating. This is one of my favorite episodes, is number 5, because I felt the energy and how you could go from James Brown to Eric B. and Rakim. And it was all about Black empowerment and movement and pushing forward and breaking through the chains and living, another reality that's where you could be yourself. And this was kind of like that 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe coming into the 90s. He explained a lot of stuff. One of the things I think I heard somebody saying in here is that though they love Parliament and they did a lot of funky music, because they were so creative and so out of the box, they didn't leave much of a formula. It's like when you make something so wild, a lot of drugs and other things involved, they didn't necessarily leave something intact where the next generation could build on it for real, not just the sound, but it's kind of like how when you see record companies, Atlantic Records is still around because they was building something on it. And the RCA is still here. Columbia Records still here. So those people that produced the music left something for their descendants. And sometimes when I look at that time span, particularly in the 70s, where we had access to more things, or we were creating things, or we believed in each other as Black people, we weren't always dependent on other people to like us first. I think in this episode, you may see something in terms of things that we can improve on. so that when we leave something for this next generation, if we can, maybe it'd be something that we could see in 30 and 40 and 50 years, just like RCA, just like Capitol Records, just like Atlantic Records. You'll start seeing these names, these record names all over again. And it says something about what we left. The last series of it is Deep Soul #6, From the Ghetto to Fabulous. It's really supposed to be Ghetto Fabulous, and they feature Mary J. Blige. Now, I felt a little conflicted on this last one. And maybe it's just me, y'all. Could just be me. Sometimes I'm not very pleased sometimes at the way we attempt to tell our story, but not have it be connected to the past. And in this one, they kind of talked about Mary J. Blige's journey from the block to Bling Sums Up and completes the 50-year journey of Black popular music. And they also featured in here very little, like Anita Baker, Luther Vandross, Whitney Houston, Run DMC, excuse me, Missy Elliott, and Destiny's Child, just to kind of wrap it up. And I just think when you don't allow people to be attached to their root, we will die. And I don't think it's an accident that hip hop is the kind of like the culmination, but it's also very weak. And we're not going to remember this era of hip hop 50 years from now. So it's going to kind of be like that era of the funk, but probably in worse shape. But because I think they could have talked about Whitney Houston. I don't think everything with Black folks have to be, we struggled, and so I came from the projects, or because as much as I love Mary, I only liked Mary when she started doing fine, fine, woo. That's when I liked Mary. I didn't really like the earlier stuff. I really wasn't into Bad Boy like that. I liked a few little things, but that just wasn't me. And I represent some people who were struggling, but still had pride in themselves. So it's interesting when you see it. You'll probably have some of those same questions. Now I have to always keep in mind this is the BBC's documentary, sees the British. So, but I think them trying to have an attempt where they're trying to tell the history of Black popular music is really awesome. I love documentaries, period. But I think one of the things that I took away from all of these documentaries is that Black people have to stop measuring themselves by white acceptance, because that's killing us. And we constantly get robbed. Like if a white person likes Black music, that's great, but they should not go to the front of the line. If a white girl can hit a note, that's nice. But if we know if a Black woman can hit that same note, treat them fairly. And I think we contribute to where our music goes. And that's why I kind of know when I looked at all of these documentaries, there is something in us because of the events of slavery, where we're these great people. If African music, it makes sense that we would do well in music. That's a part of our heartbeat and the rhythm to who we are and our spirit and our soul. This is who we are. But I think one of the things we have to work on is stop measuring ourselves by how white people see us. If they buy your records, that's great, but don't change yourself for them. And so that's what I took away with, because even though hip hop was supposed to be something from the street, that's not who's running it right now. And again, I always ask, how is it that through the beginning, way back to Ray Charles to now, why are white people still owning all of our stuff? So let me give y'all a recap so I can get up out of here. Because tomorrow night we're talking about movies that reflect Black love. So these are documentaries looking at Black music. The Life of Raleigh. This is the life of B.B. King, y'all. Great documentary, is on Netflix. The next one is Chasing Train. This is a story talking about John Coltrane. It's a John Coltrane documentary. You get to learn about this awesome saxophonist extraordinaire. Then What Happened, Miss Simone? This is the story of Nina Simone, really talking about her life. And this is, I hope that somebody really does her biography, and I hope that you cast someone who looks like her, who lived in her skin. Do not cast an actress and paint her up. Cast somebody who lived in the same skin that Nina Simone, along with features as her. The next one is I Call Him Morgan. This is about jazz trumpeter Lee Morgan and his volatile relationship with his wife, Helen Morgan, who was murdered in 1972. The next one is Reflection on the East. This is about a place called the East in Brooklyn, where the spiritual jazz movement took place. The next one, this is a part of a series, So Deep, the story of Black popular music. The first one is The Birth of Soul, and it's centered around Ray Charles. The second, Deep Soul 2, the story of Black popular music. The second is The Gospel Highway, and it's centered around Sam Cooke. But it stars other people, of course. Deep Soul 3, the story of Black popular music. The Soul of Young Black America. This is really centered around Motown and the acts of that time. The next one is Deep Soul, number 4, the story of Black popular music. This is Southern Soul, and it is stories told around Otis Redding, but it also features a lot of other Southern Soul artists. Deep Soul, number 5, my favorite, the story of Black popular music. Ain't It Funky? And it's centered around James Brown and all of the funk music that came out of James Brown's Funkle came out of the one, y'all, the one. And then Deep Soul 5 is From the Ghetto to Fabulous, and it's centered around Mary J. Blige, but it talks about soul music, the history of Black popular music. These are all the documentaries, family. This last, the Deep Soul series, is on YouTube, and you can watch all of them. And if I was you, I would write these down, and while you got time, you might as well just watch them. Learn something about B.B. King. Learn something about John Coltrane. Learn something about Nina Simone. Know something about Lee Morgan. Know something about the East, the birth of spiritual jazz. Learn something about all of these artists. Some of these artists I did not even know. And I was like, wow, like Ruth Brown. I think somebody should do a story on her. I had no idea who she was. No idea. And so these are all the Deep Soul. Sam Cooke, I mean, the Supremes, the Temptations. I mean, look at all these people. Aretha Franklin, Otis Redding, Sam and Dave. I mean, James Brown. I mean, man, Whitney Houston and Missy Elliott. Yeah, right on, Sequestra. So these are, y'all, the documentaries that I shared with you all. It was definitely a pleasure sharing these things with you all. I'm just a strong believer. Let me take this share off. I am, hold on, family. I am a strong believer in documentaries. I think that these are gifts that our ancestors have left us. These are like the playbooks. And when you study them, you get to learn more about yourself. If you are a musician, and I say this to Black folks all the time, if you know, it's too many times I hear Black kids like all they know is Beyonce. Nothing against Beyonce. I don't even know the woman. But even Beyonce probably heard of a lot of these people. You know, I didn't even talk about Tina Turner. They didn't even talk about Tina Turner. But anyway, but I'm just saying, but you know, she definitely probably studied some stuff. It would do you good. It's a good thing that if you want to be an artist, or if you want to know, there's nothing worse than, this is my honest to God truth, is to be in a place and have white people know more about you than you, when you really do have access to the information, because now it's out there for real. You just have to stop following the trend because you just want to fit in, and find your own path and learn about the people who come before you. We have invented this music. And this came out of struggle. This came out of the cotton fields. This came out of pain and terror. This came out of a lot of hardship. And that's partly what made them so great. So family, I hope you enjoyed the films I shared with you tonight. Black music documentaries. You gotta check them out. Tomorrow I'll come to you all with Black love movies. And giving you some more insight, y'all. I'm one of those people, I could turn on the TV and see Black people all day, and that would not be a problem for me. That's just me. I want to have the same thing white people have in terms of living in a world where I get to see myself in every aspect of life. I don't want to be looking for the token. I want to, what is it like for Black people? You know, one of the things they talked about in one of the episodes that they loved about funk music, this is what I thought was kind of interesting. They said funk is when you get in the room with a bunch of people and y'all just do whatever you do, but there's still connections there. And so I was like, wow, that's a lot of what happened with blues music. That's a lot that happened with soul music. That term race music, I think sometimes we got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot. Because when you say you just can't be by yourself, that's when people swoop in and take advantage of us. You should love yourself enough to be just with yourself. Anything else would just enhance it. But that's where you may want to check yourself, because I think that's the part of being a slave that we're holding on to. Not enslaved, but being a slave is when you do it yourself. When you find yourself doing it, because all those documentaries that I shared with you all, those film documentaries, and all of those was the question of identity that we were struggling with as Black people. And it was all in there. And other people look at our music and they love our struggle. They love the blues, but they don't want the struggle that make the blues. You know, you love to hear Wilson Pickett get that yell in there, but he had to walk a certain way as a Black man, the way he looked. And we don't want to talk about that. We love B.B. King and Lucille. But when you see, you know, B.B. King's story, The Life of Riley, you're going to look at the blues a little differently. And you're not just going to take for granted that, you know, like you know Mr. B.B. King. You really don't know this man. Most of us never lived the way he lived or came out of what he came out of. So we got to know it. And you cannot have other people knowing their story and you don't know their story. Food for thought, family. Please share this. When I do the films, please share them. I think y'all should be writing these things down. So as you watch The Real Housewives and all that other garbage in, garbage out, put some of this in there. This will fuel your soul. You'll never look at blues music again. It'll never be the same after watching The Life of Riley. Never be the same. You're never going to see B.B. King the same. You're never going to see rock and roll the same. You even going to even hate saying the word. Like, that's bullshit. That's thievery. Every time you say rock and roll, that's like calling somebody a thief. And in a way, that's why people don't use that word. We'll say pop, which is still the same thing as rock and roll. When you watch the documentary, pop and rock and roll is thievery terms. These are the terms they use to rob our people of their talents, of their gifts. Some of the Black folks didn't make as much money as their manager. These are things we should really be thinking about, family. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our ancestors. You know, you're never going to look at soul music again. You're never going to look at jazz the same again. When you hear these people's backstories, it's just never going to be the same. When you understand the root and the sacrifices that were made for us to be able to scratch a record, when you understand what it took to come up with these tempos, you sampling this could be a little disrespectful because people had to work at that. That came out of sweat. The lyrics was one thing, but coming up with the music was something totally different. That's very different. And there's some people own that music forever, and it wasn't the person who sang and wrote that song. It was the generation of thievery that happened in Black soul music in particular, and how white artists stole people's dreams and stole people's music in their life. And we gotta honor that and set the record straight. So, family, I think I done beat this dead horse to death. Please hit the like button. Please watch these documentaries. There is a brother who has a YouTube channel called Real Black. I watch a lot of black films on his YouTube channel. I typed it in there, Real, Reel Black. I watch a lot of black movies on there. And sometimes there's a lot of different films and documentaries on there as well. He does a lot of awesome interviews. He's a black man from out of Philly. I think he's out of Philly. But y'all, it's up to us. If you want to honor our ancestors, know their stories, and be inspired to write different endings in your story. With that, family, I bid you adieu. I just wanted to say that. I bid you adieu. But good night, family. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace and blessings.